Hi, good evening. I hope this video finds everybody well, of course, as always. So, um, I wanted to do a quick video. I'm starting to put together uh, information on basically the fundamentals of like reality and existence, and not only that, but like the experience of what happens when we die, and a way to explain that and kind of piece it together in a holistic um, and accurate manner. Because I've read a lot of books over the years and seen a lot of videos and talked to a lot of people too, and there's so many theories out there, which is great, but there's a lot of like unknowns and that sort of thing. And I've always been a firm believer in there's an answer for everything. There's a way to explain at least everything. So um, that being said, there's definitely it's a great tool to be able to like communicate with people in the afterlife and explain that sort of thing to you, especially people who were once physical like we are on Earth. So um, that being said, I want to make like a series of short videos and kind of just share like little truths here and there, but then also piece it together into like one uh, holistic video that kind of brings it all together. So that being said, real quick, so starting with the very basics of the fundamentals of reality, um, this is all physical, of course. So like with anything, there's dualism or duality, and of course the counterpart to physicality is simply non-physical. So we have physical and then non-physical, plain and simple, and that really starts off the entire understanding of all there is. With before, and I'll explain this in other videos too, but this is all evolution. This physical everything, the physical concept of nothing is eternal. That's what basically starts everything, like outer space. When there's nothing at all, and there's no presence of anything, there is simply space. So that concept right there is infinite. That begins the idea of infinity too, as well, because if you picture like nothing out there in space, nothing at all, just pure nothing, space itself is still present, in other words. So you can go in any given direction. Nothing means the absence of anything. So you can, if you think about it, you can go in one direction as far as possible, because once you bump into something, you no longer have nothing. Now you have something. Even if that's a boundary, what's on the other side of that boundary? You can't have nothing because nothing as a concept in and of itself literally spans in every direction all at once. And space is the first really concept that is infinite and is in every single direction. And really that's all where this came from. So space at a certain point, against the never-ending timeline of eternity, there's a chance that something will occur in that space, which it did. Density at a certain point came together, created, friction, heat, things built upon each other, and evolution slowly occurred over time as these qualities began to develop out of nothing. Because literally, if you think about it, if there's nothing like forever and ever, but there's space gives us a starting element to compound against itself. So, and space itself is a concept. So things can happen within that, like density, pressure, which creates friction, heat, that sort of stuff. And against the timeline of infinity, in other words, it's fair to say, of course, between now and, forever, which never ends, there's a chance that something will occur in all this infinite space. And with all that time, literally infinite time, it did at a certain point. So, of course, nothing could have ever happened, but thankfully something did, and here we are, So, and that really is kind of the fundamental starting point of where this all comes from. Now, all this is physical. Space is physical, and that begins the very first concept of infinity or eternity. Science kind of speaks about this too. the qualities of space and time, both are eternal. Because if you track space forever in one direction with time, you'll go on forever. So there is no beginning. Time is eternal. There's no end. There's no way to really. You could track things within like a certain timeline. If something is created and rises and then dissolves, you could track that within the context of infinity. But really, there is no end to space or time, which is kind of cool if you think about it. So. Now, that being said, this is all physical. Remember, space is physical, outer space. The absence of absolutely everything is simply, pure black outer space in every direction, plain and simple. Now, this space is physical, because it is occupied space. But fundamentally, there is a non-physical, identical counterpart existing in the exact same space. And that literally is true for everything physical, period. For example, everything is both physical and non-physical. Anything that's physical is identically non-physical at the same time. So right now, your very body, everything, 100% of it also has a non-physical counterpart as well. So if you removed your physical self, portion of yourself, and just saw the physical, non-physical portion, what's remaining, it would be identical to a T. It's just the nature of how things are, and that's simply how it works from like a baseline or foundational level. So, which is really cool if you think about it. And from what I understand when speaking with some of my spiritual guides as well, this is exactly how they communicate with us. So if this duality didn't exist, if physicality didn't have an identical, seamless copy of itself at all times, 100% of the times, a non-physical copy, they literally couldn't see us, believe it or not. Non-physical beings, because if you think about it, like let's say, when we're hearing our thoughts, it's not physical. Or like, let's say you visualize your own name, like you can literally picture, your own name, spell it out in front of you in the air, and what you're seeing is non-physical. It's like our dreams. All this occurs in a non-physical, using non-physical sight. It's not your physical eyes that are seeing these things. So just like it's not your physical ears that are hearing your thoughts, it's your non-physical ears. So without this duality, they couldn't see us. That's exactly how everyone that exists in the afterlife or the non-physical, portion of eternity sees us, hears us, and that sort of thing. Without that, they literally wouldn't even know we're here, literally, because non-physical things cannot see physical things. For example, your physical eyes can't see non-physical energy and vice versa. Same with your ears, and that's just 100% true. It doesn't mean that but remember, we are both physical and non-physical. Our minds, our souls, our experience, everything like that is stored. When we read, for example, or hear things that's stored in our memory, and that's all non-physical. So we do have a non-physical portion of our being that does not have a physical counterpart, like our minds and souls and everything. So to summarize, everything's physical, has an equal, identical, non-physical counterpart existing in the same space at the same time, always. But we do have that added aspect of our non-physical being, which is our minds and our emotions. All five senses that we store in our memories as experience, that sort of thing. That's really our mind or our mental constructs. It's very real, but they don't. They exist in two separate realms, basically. So just like your mental, non-physical thoughts, they can't move your physical car, if just by pure intent. They just exist in two separate realms. Doesn't mean that they're completely separate and don't affect each other. Because clearly, our thoughts can affect our emotions. If we think something bad or good, or we see a scary movie, that sort of thing, and then we have a memory of it later, memories our physical body, because it really works. It's integrated with our mind, what we think and what we store and that sort of thing. It can easily evoke or make your physical body react. So they're not completely separate, But as far as being able to impact one another, that is true. But being able to see us is impossible unless we have a non-physical counterpart. So it is also another reason. So why, and I'm still learning this as I go too, but why the ability to communicate with the non-physical realms is so tricky. If it was as easy as someone showing up there physical and they could show up and just talk to you, it'd be super easy. You could hear them and see them just like they were once when they were here on Earth. But it's in the realm of non-physicality, and that right there is why. So, and it's just simply because, and it's something anyone can develop, and I think many of us experience at least more than once through our lifetime, this greater connection to all things that are non-physical, because it's just something that is naturally there for some. It wasn't for me. It became something I kind of developed over time. But it's something you can develop over time too. So, and it's really, and you would think too, like, well, if I can hear my own thoughts, like, why is it so hard to say, like, to see an angel or hear them if they show up? If I can visualize things mentally in front of me, both, visually and audibly as well, why can't I just see them show up like that? Well, which is a good question, because I asked that too, which is why I bring it up. But like anything else, it's a skill, because if you think about it, everyone has thoughts, and we hear our own thoughts, and it's pretty easy, to draw up knowledge and think things through, or ponder things or daydream, in our own heads and that sort of thing. But do we hear other people's thoughts? No, but they hear their own thoughts. So, but they're going through the same process we are. So it's really, we're trained our whole lives to focus on information coming in, through the five senses, and then we store it, and then we can access it, and we can hear our own thoughts and that sort of thing. But this same process that we're going through, everybody is going through as well. So it's just really a matter of starting to tune in to other aspects of non-physical energy that are already there. We've just never been trained to focus on that sort of thing. Everything we say is, we read it and we think about it in our heads, and our minds are stored in our heads. This is where we think. This is where we listen to music, and that sort of stuff. So everything's stored there, and that's where we access it. But we're never taught from a young age to, use these same abilities to hear things outside our own heads or see things outside our own heads. So that is, and I think that's a pretty good example right there, because I can easily hear my own thoughts and visualize things in front of me. But it is, I still can't. It's not like I go around and hear like people's thought processes or stuff like that, but at all. But it's the same mechanisms at play, as far as being able to see what's in front of you non-physically that isn't self-generated from yourself, both visually and audibly. So that being said, that is kind of starts very basically just kind of the idea of where this comes from. Also, so our non-physical portion of self is what survives when we die. So the physical things that are physical, they are created, and then they were our bodies, they died, for example. But that non-physical half of us is preserved also, and it remains forever. Like our minds, they don't dissolve. They're actually preserved. There's a process where our minds and souls are specifically, purposely preserved in order for us to carry over into the afterlife. And it's really cool. I'm going to be doing more on that too. In other words, what exactly happens when we die, and who exactly maintains that process. So one more point I just want to kind of put in here, which I thought was pretty interesting, is remember, everything's, no matter what, if all of us were gone right now and we started with nothing, there'd be physical space in every direction. In this space, there's also non-physical space in every direction. both existing at the same time in every direction. So just like physical evolution occurred in this universe at a certain point, and physicality, it's dense and it follows rules, and takes time, for things to manifest and process and evolve and dissolve and that sort of thing. So just like evolution can occur in the physical realms, it can also just as easily occur in the non-physical realms, which is really fascinating. In fact, non-physical. So just to kind of summarize again, everything physical has a non-physical counterpart, but not everything non-physical has a physical counterpart. Like our minds, for example. So that being said, in the non-physical realms, everything is possible. It's not limited by time or rules or laws of nature, that sort of thing. Density, just like like if I want a Pepsi here, I'd have to walk to the store, buy it. If the producer of Pepsi, they have to create the chemicals and the factory and then bottle it and send it, everything like that. It follows physical rules for something, an idea, to come to life here in the physical half of eternity. So in other words, the universe, physical universe. But you could just as easily in about 2 or 3 seconds visualize like a cold can of Pepsi in your hand, like identically. If you've had one, you know what it looks like, feels like, tastes like. You can literally create that, like just like that, immediately using your mind. We need gas in our cars to move here physically, or you could picture your car like in front of you, and you can move it from point A to point B, just by using the intent of your focus and whatever you want to visualize. So, and that's a good example right there of how immediate things can occur in the non-physical realms, and kind of points to how anything is really possible, only limited by what we can conceptualize and think of. So over there, things are immediate, fast, eternal, and limitless, completely limitless. So now one aspect of like all of this and where it came from, which I found really interesting too, was non-physical energy, can also form as well. Remember, everything physical has a non-physical counterpart. So whatever forms there will have that duality. But this non-physical space can start to do its own thing and evolve as well, completely separate from this physical duality. So, if it does, it is not limited or bound by the rules of physicality. So, believe it or not, before all this evolved, what we know in the physical universe as of now, evolution did occur in the non-physical portion of eternity and began to evolve faster and more immediate. Like what's the afterlife for us? Because I use that term a lot because we come from the physical portion of eternity first and then pass over into the afterlife. For those who were born and raised or created or evolved in the non-physical realms, that's been the reality all along. So the afterlife isn't necessarily maybe accurate for what evolved over there, but non-physicality, in other words, that evolved massively before anything ever occurred in the physical realms in a very slow manner. So there was a thriving, just infinite civilization of all possibility, and just which is an interesting story in and of itself. Beings that are extremely old, that predated physical conscious evolution, and began to, at a certain point, realize this duality and observe physicality, and were there from the beginning to watch physical evolution occur in this half of existence as well. So there are very careful rules in place to observe and not disturb and that sort of thing. Remember, just like I can't move my physical car with my mind, they actually don't have the ability to affect physicality just by observing it. So we'd be in a whole lot of trouble if whatever we thought or wanted or that sort of thing affected the rules of the physical universe. So it's the same thing, which is very interesting. It's why they observe these things happening. Of course, they can see everything that we are, but with their non-physical eyes. So, but they see us just like we see each other physically, just to a much greater level of detail as well. But again, just like I can't generate something physically immediately or affect anything physically with my non-physical mind. They can't either, because they're of non-physical substance only. That's why healing isn't possible. That's why isn't, well, not possible. It's possible because we can do it, which is a whole nother study or focus of spiritual. It's hard and it's rare and that sort of thing, but it has happened, like miracles and that sort of thing. But there's no, it doesn't come from the spiritual realms. It doesn't come from the afterlife at all. So they observe and they do not interfere with physical evolution, but they preserve all life, so that when the physical portion of it does dissolve or go away, what's the non-physical aspects, which are preserved, are seamlessly carried over into the afterlife. So, which kind of begins the question, what happens when we die? And it's really interesting because it's the same for everybody, and it's fair. It is applied across the board. Everybody goes through it. There's no all life, inanimate, animate, conscious, unconscious, it is preserved and carried over into the non-physical realms very carefully and very safely. So there is a very all of this is handled by like enlightened excuse me, spiritual beings over there, even people we know here. Once you die and cross over, you can take over that part of that process too. So it's good to know in that realm excuse me, infinite knowledge and infinite understanding of the preservation of this rare thing of physical creation is taken very seriously, and it's only good. There's no evil or hidden agendas. Everybody, including ourselves who die and cross over, all help maintain this process, including those who are evolved in the spiritual realms as well. So there's a very real conscious civilization over there, monitoring and preserving, but not interfering with what's really, because they can, just because of the fundamental nature and difference between physicality and non-physicality. So everything is respected here to that degree, and everything is preserved and carried over. So doesn't matter how you die, doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter anything. So as far as none of that affects how you wake up in the afterlife. It is seamless and it is immediate. Which, and I know there's a lot of theories about that, like wandering souls, or what if you die, there's beliefs in reincarnation, which isn't true because this all comes from physicality. This is our one-time life here, but we do live forever, which is very great. It's a very great fact to be aware of, and allows for peace of mind. So we are immortal. We will be preserved and carry over. There's no period between when we die and wake up in the afterlife. It is immediate. So literally just within a second of your physical body, which is monitored, once it expires, your soul is transported immediately and awoken like that within a second. So I know there's a lot of theories about timing and karma, reincarnation, lost or confused souls wandering, like if you die by suicide or something like that, and then you wander the earth, or if you're of a low vibration or negative energy when you die, you might find yourself in realms of similar vibration, karma, or simply reincarnation as far as resonance goes, and where you were basically emotionally and mentally and that sort of thing when you die. But none of that's accurate, believe it or not. So we die, we're all treated the same fairly, we're all woken up. Believe it or not, everybody, good people, bad people, it's understood that we don't know how this works, and the only fair thing is to carry over everything seamlessly. And then once we wake up over there, we can learn about what happened here, or review our lives, that sort of thing, and see what we did, and just pick up where we left off. Everybody is treated equally for that reason. So, and I know, because I've actually experienced this too sometimes, the phenomena of seeing spirits or things or wandering around or that sort of thing. There's very tight rules, tightly maintained, and objective and fair rules from that realm to this. So spirits aren't allowed to wander. Guides aren't allowed just to wander. No one's following us around, like watching our every move. Privacy is respected, that sort of thing. Everything's preserved and maintained from one realm to the next. But when we see things, there's a way to explain that sort of thing. So when it's just like the dreaming process, like in our heads, all our stored information, from the day it's lying dormant, but it's easily activated. So with our eyes closed, we could literally just kind of bump into our own stored information. That's why dreams are, they're just our minds. They're just our collective experience. That's why they do or don't make sense sometimes. Because when we're awake, we're focused on everything around us. But our databases, when we go to sleep, they're just kind of lying dormant, but they're just as easily accessed when we're asleep. But when we're not, our eyes aren't open and we're not aware of what's going on. Basically our awareness can just kind of like ping around inside of our databases, like a pinball basically. And it's like, that's why things seem random, or sometimes we feel things or don't hear them or see them. So dreams really don't have any real meaning, believe it or not. It's just randomly activated. It's your database being activated and uncontrolled through your lack of awareness because your conscious mind is shut off. But that being said, lucid dreams, people can learn to control their dreams, and you can communicate with the spiritual realms just as easily when you're asleep as when you can when you're awake. I can't do that at all, but this is the same process. Excuse me. So you just have to be aware and communicate non-physically. You're just doing it with your eyes shut instead of with your eyes open. So that being said, this energy that can easily be activated, everything's in a dormant mode of resonance. When we see, if we hear like a loud sound, believe it or not, even physically when we're awake, our databases react. And it's doing the same thing. It's activating words and ideas and images and stuff like that. Just like a computer kind of. But we're just unaware of all this activity going on because we've been trained since we're young to focus on one thought at a time. We only think one line of thought. Most people think one line of thought at a time and think audibly in words. But really our souls, if you will, our minds and our collective database and experience that store everything in the five sense manner that we experience while we're here, can easily be activated. Any sound, physical, even non-physical. This database can just start automatically kind of doing its own thing, just like a random computer activated. So it's just that we're not aware of it. So just like on any given day, all we hear are our own thoughts. And it, like when we think one, in full sentences, one word at a time, but we're drawing this information from somewhere. It's all this data and language that we store and learn. We're just consciously bringing it up as we were trained to do. So, but that being said, it's this phenomenon that actually creates what we see around us non-physically. So if I just go to a museum, for example, say like I go to a World War II museum, and I'm walking around like, man, that was great. I'm thinking about this and that sort of thing. It could easily project your ideas, anything that's related to that, whether it comes from the museum or a movie you watched or history books, could easily be like exuding from your database or soul. This stuff is very fluid, your soul, that sort of energy in the non-physical realm. So just like we see things in our head when we're dreaming with our eyes closed, these things can be projected outside of us unbeknownst to us, because we don't know how to control or store this information. So for example, even a loud noise could that sound resonance could just like move energy that's stored inside you. You don't lose it, of course, but it's just it's like a ripple effect when you throw a stone in a pond. You throw it and then energy just kind of ripples from your database. outside you. And it could create images, it could create sounds, that sort of thing. And it actually does, believe it or not, do this all the time. It's just a sea of energy around us. And everything's very sensitive and everything reacts to that sort of thing. It's just, again, we're not tuned into that. We're tuned into physicality for the most part. But this is where it's the same process, like when your eyes are closed and you're dreaming, just like daydreaming. Stimuli outside you very easily can cause visions and audible things that are not coming from the spiritual realms at all. They're really generated from me or the person next to me. Believe it or not, even on television, these things are captured. Like when you see someone on television, their mind's still in their head. So when you're focusing on that, if anything's like emanating from your soul, unbeknownst to you, it can react with their soul on television. So, it's another database to like kind of ping off that, and ping off that, and can create images and sensations and that sort of thing too. So that's what a lot of people have experienced when they see or hear things. It comes from their own internal database, or it reacting with things around it unbeknownst to them. And just like with our dreams, like the more we focus on these things, the more they'll stay there, and we can even communicate with them. You can literally have a conversation with someone that comes up from your own memory, like in your dream state, but it's not really them, in other words. So, but the more you engage that, just like we engage our thinking process, it's like you can talk back and forth, but it's not really that person. But again, it is possible, and that's exactly how communication with the spiritual realms works, non-physically, both when you're awake and possibly while you're asleep. So it can be tricky because it's not necessarily always a real spiritual being or a guide, or a lost, a loved one that passed on that you're necessarily communicating with, whether you're awake or asleep. So you have to be aware of that and understand. It just practice makes perfect, and to understand who you're talking with and share information, practice the techniques and the process and that sort of thing, to be able to differentiate that. That being said, too, there's no negative energy, believe it or not. There's no wandering souls. Like I was saying, the departed are immediately transported. Anything we see is going to be reactionary energy. And there's no evil spirits or beings or dark energy, believe it or not. We can create these sensations, and they can be really real sometimes. And just like with the phenomena of healing and miracles, which is totally possible, rare, it doesn't happen a lot, but possible, when physical and non-physical energy of our own generating, this doesn't come from the spiritual realms, could cause very possibly like a physical object to move, that sort of thing. So it's not that the possibility isn't real, but what's generating it is not what we think it is. It's not evil energy or negative beings or demons or that sort of thing do not freely roam the earth. Neither do good beings like angels. Like this place has to be observed and monitored. But people aren't just free to wander wherever they want to. So even our loved ones, they're not just like walking around going through our personal belongings. There's the rules are extremely objective and strict and fair and respectful of our experience down here. So no one's going through our minds either, through our souls or observing us, that sort of thing. We're left well alone, but this whole place is monitored for reasons of like maintenance and preservation. So all this phenomenon of like seeing wandering souls or that sort of thing. And I've seen some videos too where psychics say, I see a wandering, I saw one the other day actually, where he was talking to a lady and he said, well, I see like a World War I or II soldier or something like walking around your house actually. And then she's like, oh yeah, this is built on an old World War I or World War II cemetery. So she knew that information, which she confirmed, but it was coming from his accessing spiritual information inadvertently. So again, it's easy for this fluid energy to project someone's stored information outside themselves. And her knowledge was literally creating this image of this ghost walking around her house. So those projections are not real. They're just projections from our own database and the interaction of all this sea of energy around us. So it's safe. It's well protected. These experiences do not come from anywhere negative. If you experience sounds or that sort of thing, which I think is important to point out. So that is, I actually talked a lot more than I intended to. I meant to split this up into like separate videos and kind of break up the information and speak to each one of these points a little bit more, because there's a whole lot more. This doesn't even cover the experience of when we die, which is the more I understood it too, the more it began to ease my fear of what happens when we die. Having these communications and being able to, and I'm still developing it too, like the ability to communicate with the afterlife. I've got so much great information, and this is included in a lot of it. But the process of what happens when we die is handled so perfectly. It's very detailed, and it's the same answer for everybody. To remove any speculation, there's no negativity involved. Everybody's treated the same. No negativity as far as heaven or hell, that sort of thing. We all go through the same process, and literally, when this physical portion dies, within a second or less, that quickly, we are transported and woken up. That's to minimize any break in the chronological timeline. That's respected. Plus, remember, our minds and everything, just like when we're dreaming, that's what we're accessing when we sleep. So once the physical body's gone, to remove any possibility of nightmares or inadvertent random imagery happening within our soul when we die, that's another reason to reduce that possibility. Our souls are immediately taken to a safe location and woken up right away, literally. I think that's really cool. So once we die, you are right back awake seamlessly within a second. And it's a process of peace, and you wake up just as you were, but made whole, healthy. And you look just like you were at the same age. This is probably why I'm going to cut off this video, because I could talk about that a lot too. I've been writing a lot of this down. I want to put it in book format too eventually, which I'll definitely share on here as we go. But the whole process of dying too is very involved. When we wake up, rather, what happens when we die. Again, it's immediate and perfect and painless, and we're at peace eternally and feel great, completely healthy. But depending on which age we die at, of course, the process is different. If you're 90 or if you're 30, you still wake up at the age you died, and you're awoken immediately, literally within a second, 1 second or less. That's how quick it happens. Once physical shutdown is complete and monitored and understood, and they know for sure that you are literally no coming back, you're woken up immediately. It happens that quickly. So there's no period of judgment or self-reflection between that. You're woken up, you're acclimated, you're informed of where you're at to help reorient you, and everyone goes through the same thing. Of course, kids is a whole nother story, like the unborn, which are preserved and saved and just as equally transported and allowed to evolve chronologically. And there's a process for that. That occurs. They're all treated the same. No life is lost. All life is considered sacred, even inanimate physicality. Everything from dirt to rocks and that sort of thing. Once it dissolves and erodes and is gone, it's still preserved and carried over. So all life is considered sacred. That has been, because this literally came out of nowhere, everything physically. So it's preserved and taken very, very seriously. Because just like it came out of nowhere, it can literally at some point, theoretically, return to nothing. And we'll never have any record of it or copy of it. So everything is preserved perfectly, privately. And there's a very intricate process for that too. So pets carry over as well and are made whole, that sort of thing. Memories are intact. So everything is seamless from where it picks up. Right where it left off. So again, before I get going too much more, I just wanted to share all this information. I think it's wonderful and hopefully provides answers. A lot of questions I had too as I started this journey of, asking questions and trying to explore exactly life after death and the nature of reality and that sort of thing, probably like 15, 20 years ago. A lot of this is really coming to completion over the last few years for me. So I'm excited to share it and the information I've received from it, and hopefully it was helpful. So we'll leave it at there for now, and I'd like to do a separate video on the whole process of dying and awakening in the afterlife. So that being said, thanks again so much for watching. I really do appreciate it too. I love sharing this information. Definitely, if you like the video, if you click the like button, I'll be honest, I don't even know what that means yet. I'm still getting used to YouTube, so I don't know what like. It's great to know that you like the videos, but I don't know how that algorithm works or what that means exactly. If you like it, it's great to see, so I know these videos are on track. Any comments are great. You can email me too if you have any suggestions. We can have them in the conversations. We can have them in the comment section, or any ideas, and I'll do videos on them. So this is a learning process and a sharing process, and I want it to be useful and informative. So I love the dialogue, and continue to watch. I thank you for that. And if you like the videos, definitely like, and subscribe too. I think it's great. Getting really excited that people are subscribing and taking an interest in this, and I think it's awesome. I think there's a lot of people that share this interest in this kind of information, and I just love this kind of like discourse and dialogue and learning process and everything like that. So thank you so much. Again, thank you for watching. Sorry for the long video. I only meant for it to be like 5 or 10 minutes. It's like 40 minutes. But really, thank you very much, and I hope this video finds you well, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.